Good evening. This is the June 16th, 17th? This date is a little... 17th, this date is not quite correct on here, but the June 17th Finance Committee meeting of the Concord School Board. Attendance is myself as chair, Kara Meeker, Bob Cotton, and Jess Campbell, all other members of the committee. So we have a full committee here tonight. Tonight we have quite a bit to go over, at least quite a few pieces of paper and handouts. But we'll be covering a review of the 300 series policies, the review of the potential year-end FY24 balance, and if time permits, we'll start a discussion on van transportation and bond update. So, since we have such a full agenda, I will pass it off to either the superintendent or the business administrator, whichever would like to go.
Well, if I could, we have a guest this evening. Behind me, we have a young man who is earning his badge in the Boy Scouts under communication. So he's here, and I thought he'd introduce himself to you.
Hello, I'm Corbin.
Hi, Corbin.
Hi, Corbin. We're happy to have you here.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah, and he brought his mom. So.
Hi, Corbin's mom. Hi, Wendy. Oh,
And
thank
Wendy
you for
had
attending.
a daughter who graduated on Saturday, so this has been a great week for her. I
That's
suspect.
awesome.
Congratulations.
We're
And-
happy you're here.
Good work on your merit badge, spoken from, Mr. Cotton, are you an Eagle Scout?
No.
Wow.
Never got that far.
Never went in there? Well, I'm an Eagle Scout, and when you're an Eagle Scout, you're an Eagle Scout for life. So, good job, and let us know what we can do to help you out. Thank you. All right. Or are there a few Eagle Scouts? They didn't have that back
In my heart, I am.
in there, so, good.
Can I just make one other comment, if
Sure.
I could? I also brought to you for your review, I guess it's the number one item on the agenda, so I'll stop. I did see it on the agenda, so.
All right, well, with that, the number one spot on the agenda, go ahead, Superintendent.
So, for your reading pleasure, I gave you the 300 series that have been reviewed. What in front of you is a current one, and then the proposed changes that need to be made around the policies, the 300 series, which is all around our finances in the district. So we're not doing that tonight, but I'm asking that as part of your homework, if you don't mind, take a look at them. And I have scheduled with the policy committee a joint meeting between the finance committee and the policy committee so that we can do those together. And so I would ask that you take a look at them. Some of them are very, very minor changes. Others a little bit more detailed based on new law, new regulations that we have to adhere to.
Has that been scheduled yet? That
Yes, it has.
meeting?
Would you like to know when?
Yes.
All right. hold
Got
on.
it at your fingertips.
I got it right at my fingertips. I thought I had it at my fingertips. Nope, they're
Yeah,
all
that's
gone.
okay.
They're gone.
Let's see.
I'm
I
sure we'll
had
find
it,
out.
but I
I
gave
think
out.
it's August 14th,
August, I
joint
believe.
communication and policy and finance, 5:30, Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
August 14th.
August 14th.
And that's joint.
And yes,
policy.
I just found my list, and Jack's right on.
Yeah, that's a joint finance and communication and policy meeting. Ms. Meeker will be chairing that.
Yes, I will.
All right.
We're going to do something similar with the instructional committee too. One of the policies that they want to look at is class size. So rather than have separate meetings, let the group come together and discuss the policies, and we want to see how that works out. So we'll do that one too later on in the month.
Thank you.
Okay. And from that joint meeting, it goes to,
Well, if
Board
there
or
are,
rec?
yeah, there may be some changes, so we tend to, once the changes are made, we've been bringing them back to the committee, to the policy committee for one final review before we bring them to the school board. I'll get a recommendation for a school board meeting to review them, first read, if you will.
First reading.
Yeah, and then second read. But there's nothing in the policies that is like we must do it right away because we'll be out of compliance. We're in very good shape here, as you know, based on your most recent audit. But we did want to improve the language and adhere to some of the new updated rules and regulations, so.
And for the benefit of our guests, when we have a policy change, we always have a first reading and then a second reading so that not only the board but the community can have their input to it as well. After the second reading, we vote on changing a policy that would affect the whole school. So we're scheduled. Good, thank you.
Kathleen, can I just ask real quick, for when we meet, I'm noticing like for the school meals and how much we charge and delinquent payments, there are things that are still sort of like unknown, which I imagine we'll have to work out. So for instance, if a student's meal account debt accumulates to blank number of dollars or more, will you have recommendations for us on that, or is that something we should research ourselves?
Well, we'll do a little bit of research for you to see what other districts do, but, you know, every district, works on their own set of issues, what's important to them, you know, and this board has always felt that, food insecurity is a huge, important issue in this district, and you've had resolutions that you wanted students to have ability for free lunch, so every district is a little different.
Yeah. I just, from my perspective, because this is new language, it seems that the recommendation that's coming to us is that we may be exploring a cap on
That's right,
debt.
that's right.
So if there is a dollar amount,
Right.
that
We'll
should be-
share that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else on the 300 series, Superintendent, that you want to discuss this
No,
evening?
I'm good if you want to move it on to
Nope. But,
Jack.
review of potential year-end FY24 balance. I assume that Mr. Dunn, you'll be taking this one?
Yeah.
Well, then
In front of you, in
proceed.
the upper right-hand corner, it says number 2. That's because it's the number 2 agenda item. Okay? And this is very rough at the moment. I just wanted to at least go over what you need for next year, I believe you're going to have, and show you how I'm going to get it if in fact everything stopped right now. That's one. Two, I just want to ask if it's okay to switch agenda items 3 and 4, only because when we go into non-public for the purpose of van transportation, then you will not reconvene, and this way there isn't a non-public, and then you have to come back.
that's fair.
If that's okay.
I find that's fine.
Okay. All right, so if it's okay on this report, we'll start in the upper right-hand corner. Talks about prior year carryover. $689,481.77. You see that? That is the amount from fiscal year 23 of purchase orders that wound up being closed out after the audit that we didn't need. So that amount carries forward.
Jack, just one question for the benefit of the audience is, can we put this up?
Oh, I can come out of here and put the actual document up.
Get it in the way.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. So there's the 689,481. What we did is I went down the right-hand side for the expenses. All the expenses begin with 6s, and all the revenues begin with 5s. Do you see what I mean by that? Okay. So I took all the expenses based on where I think they'll be and where they are now. If they have a blank or a 0, then I'm assuming it's going to be at least 0. If it has a negative that's bigger than that, or the negative, I'm taking it at this point. So when you total all the expenses, I'm expecting about 1.7 million in savings through expenses. Most of that is between salary and benefits. And then on the revenue side, we're projecting a potential additional 429,000, and that is from tuition. And then the other amount that's negative is the food service debt, which I'm going to ask for a motion for you to appropriate when I have leftover money to carry that. You're already moving up to 35,000. I need an additional 65, up to 65. We'll see where things come in at, because remember, the student debt cannot be, it has to be at 0 for year end, June
Right.
30, as required under that federal program.
When you say we're already carrying 35,
Yep.
just unpack that a little bit.
So what I had anticipated, because that's what we had been running, was about $35,000. If you look in the 6-9 series,
Okay.
so scroll down to 693002, it'll say fund transfer to food service fund. In your budget, I pre-built 35,000.
Okay.
For FY '25, I made it 55,000. Right now, you're at $93,000 in student debt.
Okay.
All right? Most of that is because of the high school. Number 2 is Renla. The high school we fed this year. Usually we cut that off 2 weeks in. They wanted to try to, so the food insecurity, feed the kids, have the commons take care of it, as you can see. So we will go back to the first 2 weeks next year because it created a significant hole. So
All right, thank you.
that's where that is. So that line would go up to the amount that we need to cover the debt. Okay? So that brings you, that brings us to, let me scroll to where else. I'm making up the difference. So when you do that, you're about $1 million short, a little under 1.8 million. So what I'm doing is if you scroll to page, which I think I said 5 of 7, which I may have said in one of my financial reports. This is where you're doing your fund transfers and an expense back into your trust funds. We had proposed to put 1.176 million into the special education trust fund. I'm proposing that we take $999,575.10 and use that to get you to the 2.8 million. Because when you look at the out-of-district placement for transportation, which is in page 3 of 7, you'll see that amount. You've seen that each month continue to rise. That's about 1.3 million right now over budget. Hence why item number 3 tonight on your agenda, which we're moving under number 4, we're going to discuss. So that is attributed to the special ed out-of-district transportation, so I'm taking it out of the special ed. I'm not gonna deposit that into the trust. As of right now, what's early on, if you go up and you see the encumbrance column all the way down, just in salaries alone, you see we have $8.4 million encumbered. Why is that? Because we have payroll this week, so this number is gonna be fluid all the way from now until June 30. But we have to do this week's payroll, and then we also pay out what's called the balloon checks, which are people that are 26 pays. We pay out their checks for the rest of their contract. So that number will come down, but whatever's left over will fall into the unassigned fund balance.
Just one other question, going back to the student transportation cost of 1.3. That also includes the homeless kids that are transported, is that right?
There's homeless in there, and I have a breakdown in non-public to discuss because it goes into what those expenses are and who gets reimbursed.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
I'll have more detail on that.
But
Regular ed and
that's-
special ed.
Okay, that's all
Okay.
of them?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's accounting for that. But you look down that encumbrance line and you go to page 5 of 7, right now there's $11.1 million encumbered. Okay? But some of this stuff is gonna clear out. We're in the process of going through open purchase orders. There's stuff that we need to leave open because we don't have the final invoices. So if you remember that prior year carryover, that 689,000, that's what that is. There'll be purchase orders that we'll have to keep open. A lot of it has to do with student services because we get bills late, plus literally the summer programs, some of those programs start a week after school's out. So we're already encumbering expenses and I have to charge them this year, so I have to leave the purchase orders open, okay? But as of right now, I believe you'll hit the amount you need to carry forward to next year. And if there is an overage amount, we'll talk about that in August and have you vote to appropriate that either in August, September, maybe October when you finalize the tax rate, depending on what things we want to get out and moved on. I will tell you this, if there's anything over and above 2.8, I'm going to suggest that you put it in your facilities and renovation trust fund.
That makes sense.
Just because the more you have, the more you're going to mitigate the impact of this building. And as we see what that financial plan looks over the next year, You'll see it before a year. You'll start to see that develop as we go through how we're going to manage this. The more you have in that account, the better off you're going to be for the rating agency, plus suppressing that increase. And you'll get to see where those savings are. So if you feel, hey, I want to put a little bit more somewhere else, you can. But that's where I'm thinking at the moment.
That makes sense.
Okay?
Jack?
Yep.
Other than the student transportation costs, are there anything in this year's financials that causes you concern for next year's budget, which we approved in March?
It probably will be, and when we have John, we'll probably talk about more student services between contracted services, difficulty in hiring those supports. I think that's going to be one. The other one may be the utilities, seeing how we fare with that, especially with the new buildings coming online with the dehumidified air. That is likely to increase the expenditures. But obviously, when they go online, it's probably not going to be till, I'm going to guess, September, October. And what I mean by that, they'll be up and running for the schools, but you don't need heat. Beaver Meadow, we can't turn on the dehumidified air because we're waiting for a transformer. So it's something they're not going to know. Broken ground, by the time they commission and everything, will probably be into September or October, but we're probably not going to be turning on the dehumidified air because it's going to start getting cooler. So we'll see how that goes, but that will affect our budget from a utilization and energy standpoint.
So with regards to utilities, we previously had some longer-term contracts that had locked us in on some things. Where do we stand right now heading into the fall and the new school year on any of those items? And does that affect your utility concerns?
So not at the moment. I think it's December is when natural gas is up, because we only did a 1 year just to see because of the overseas activity. So we'll see where that is, but electricity is a little longer. But you're right, when we did lock in, we locked in for kilowatt hour at 5.5 cents. That jumped to 11.5 or 12.5 cents when that contract came up. And then the therms went from 7 cents a decatherm up to 11, 12 as well. So, we'll work to mitigate that the best we can, but what we have in those buildings is what we have in those buildings. That's why it'll be important, a little divergence into the middle school is the systems you picked for that, because I think you're gonna see a lot of this volatility for some time to come.
Oh, yeah.
As the demand for, in your middle school, it's proposed to be an all-electric building. So having things to mitigate that, like the photovoltaic, which is solar panels, and the geothermal will help hopefully mitigate that.
Thank you.
Okay. And when I get down into the revenues, I've noted what I think they'll come up to be. Number one, when you see current appropriations, that's local property taxes. So you can see there's still 2.8 million that's coming in for this year. And usually that happens about every 2 weeks. We have a schedule once you pass your budget, and then we update it again in October, and we work with the city to coordinate timing of the money, because they have times when they have a lull, especially around the holidays for tax collection, and we have times where our spikes because state revenue comes in. So we make sure that tax money that they need to send to us is coordinated so that it doesn't hurt them and that we have the right piece to keep operating ourselves. So very close coordination as it relates to that. If I go down a little bit into the regular tuition, VOC childcare, one of the things we had budgeted was tuition for childcare at the VOC, but they don't do that anymore, so that's why that's a negative. If I keep going down, as you can see, 513210 regular day school tuition. That's right now negative 1.2, and I have not accounted for anything because we still have to do the final billing for Deerfield. and that usually happens right after school's done, because we have final attendance, so we'll see where that comes in at. And let's see, you could see the VOC up a little bit. They call it the VOC differential. That's where we bill the schools for what the state falls short on. You see some money for foster children, 14,000. We budget zero because we don't know, because that comes and goes. So that's why that's a positive. I think other than that,
The rentals piece, 519100.
yeah, so as I
That's-
mentioned,
yeah,
the
you
presidential
had-
years,
yeah.
yeah, that just didn't happen this year, so that's likely where we're gonna end up. So next year, we have in your budget 150, because it's an off year, and that's usually about what we bring in. I did put on the screen, because I know it came up at the Joint City School about having the schools open. We do, anybody can go on and rent the facilities.
Right.
And we have a link on there, and it tells you all about the facilities and how many people can fit, and chairs, and the expenses that go along with that. So that's open to anybody. You just need to provide an insurance certificate, and there's a list of fees for profit and nonprofit. But the exchange between the city, which is coordinated, especially in the athletic world every day, we do not charge each other. Unless there's certain expenses, like for example, the lights at Memorial Field, we pay for it. Bishop Brady pays for it. We split those expenses. But other than that, there is an exchange of funds.
Jack, with this particular political cycle coming up, there may be an influx of needed spaces, right, for the 2024 election over this summer into the general election.
With two candidates, that's it?
Probably
No.
not.
Our time is the lead
Yeah.
up, is the year prior, because you have the New
Primaries,
Hampshire primary. That's
yeah.
what we're banking on. It
Okay.
just didn't happen. So if we do get any bonus, great, but not anticipating it. Okay.
Jack, just one other
Yeah.
question, or maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Nope.
But the Medicaid distribution line,
Yep.
what,
So
number one,
as-
what is that?
So
Why is it
that's
where it is?
federal revenue that we get from submitting our Medicaid claims. So one, we are changing providers. Two, the person that helped mitigate, to help with that had left a few weeks ago. You may have heard Kathleen talking about, we are bringing that person back on Fridays to help assist, because John being out for a bit. But one of the things with Medicare claims is you can go back to 12 months. So we're gonna see how far they get caught up, and you can go back 12 months. So there may be, if we fall short on the revenue now, if they're caught up to, say, January, well, we have all the way to December to go back to January. So they're just behind. So we'll see. And we are changing providers. The provider we have now hasn't been as reliable, so we are changing providers that help us process Medicaid claims.
Jack, will that go into effect in September or next year?
July 1.
July 1?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then E-rate, that is originally budgeted 15, but this was a Category 2. It was the last year of Category 2 last year. The money didn't come in till this year, so we booked it to this year. So that's why that's a little higher than it normally would be. So you have Category 1, which is just your internet, and then there's a 5-year cycle of what's called Category 2. And Category 2 is infrastructure, so network switches, access points in the building. So that will, our 5-year cycle, we've spent our 5-year cycle, we're done. That next cycle, when that comes up, one of the things, if you remember me putting on the list, and I may have forgot to put it on the list, but as we're working through the financial plan for the middle school, that is something that we're trying to factor in, so that we can coordinate Category 2 at the same time we build the school and put all the money that we would have normally put into that for technology, we'll put into the new building, which would mitigate what we'd need to borrow.
Makes sense.
So, a lot of things like that going on. I met with the IT staff, diverging a little bit, on, what was it, last Thursday, and we went through the schematic design things. We're coordinating with HMFH to have just an IT discussion, and IT includes everything from cameras to these things to the actual technology. We're looking at the long-term plan on when all the student laptops are up, which right now, under the plan, we're gonna replace the 6th and 9th grade every year, rather than a whole school, just because they can get that and carry it through the school. So we're trying to see what things can we pull out to say, we're not gonna borrow that for 30 years or put that into the project, because already in our operating budget, there's gonna be those items. But also the cameras, which are a big deal, because that's coming up. We put them in with that grant in 2019, so this has been 5 years. So probably in the next couple of years, we're gonna need to coordinate, okay, what's the next system? What are they proposing for the middle school? What do we have now? And do we stick with the same one, or do we change that out? So a lot of that coordination is beginning to happen too, even though it's another year or so off. That's what we'll work at. Okay? Any other questions? Okay. I'll go on to agenda item number 4, which is just a bond update.
Before we do that,
Yep.
Jack, do you need us to make a motion to recommend to the board the additional $65,000
Yeah, if you could,
to be
please, yes.
transferred?
That we appropriate any excess funds
So-
for,
Would someone like to make that motion, and then we can vote on whether we make that recommendation while we're still here in this budget section?
I'd be happy to, but I need help wording it.
Where is it?
It's the-
move to appropriate 65,000 from the unassigned fund balance
Okay,
to cover food service meal debt.
gotcha. Okay, I move to reassign the 65,000 from the, what was it?
The general fund,
General funds.
and transfer it to the food service
Transfer it
fund
to the food services fund.
for an amount up to 65,000.
For an amount up to 65,000. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. Motion was made by Ms. Campbell and seconded by Mr. Cotton. Is there any discussion among the committee? With that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That motion passes, and we will bring it to the full board on the next full board meeting in July. Thank you, Mr.
Okay?
We also need to make the special education trust fund
Do we need to make an adjustment?
adjustment recommendation.
Not at the moment, only
Okay.
because when you do your motion, you do it up to. So
Okay.
if I'm
Yes.
short, that's where it is, but
Okay.
I'll probably have you verify that what I did, once everything is said and done. It's so early right now.
Gotcha, thank
Hey,
you.
if it came in and I didn't need to touch it, great, depending on what
Okay.
those encumbrances do, so I'm okay. Food service fund, I know, I have no choice.
Right.
It doesn't
Okay.
have the money.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
That one's an easy one.
Thank
Okay.
you. Anything else, Mr. Dunn, on the reviewing year-end FY '24?
I do not.
Okay, please. Thank you very much for that and all your work, and your team.
Yes.
Because I know they're the ones who do all the real hard, heavy lifting.
Yeah, I just watched them do it. Nah,
And
they
we
do- they
appreciate,
do
we
great.
appreciate you watching, but we appreciate their efforts as well, if not more. So with that, let's move on to item number 4.
Yes. So bonds in the HVAC buses. I just wanted to revisit this. So in front of you, you have the replacement bus list.
Nice.
Okay,
Yes.
I wanted to give you that as well. But during your budget process, you had appropriated as part of your FY '25 budget payments on an estimated financial plan. We are going through that bond process approval, which is a lot of steps. It's gonna take us the next 2 to 3 months to get that done. But I just wanted to let you know we're doing that, and that the budget process is separate from the bond process, okay? But this is what that bond will look like. 17 million for the HVAC. That is to replace the 30-year-old HVAC system with a dehumidified air system. Beaver Meadow, 1.45 million. Now, that was not the total price of that. Remember, we used ESSER funds to mitigate that impact. That amount was about 3.25 or 3.5 million. So that's the balance. But again, that's to replace the Beaver Meadow. That is happening now. Concord High is not till next summer. Okay? Right now, you have Broken Ground and Beaver Meadow happening. That started Monday. And then buses, 1.5 million to replace 12 buses. And I give you the list to show you the age of those buses, going back to 2009. So you have to say if you're in '24, there are 25 buses because the next year is out. So we're looking at buses that are close to 16 years, if you look at the model year being produced. So basically, most of the buses in that first batch are being replaced. And then you also have the 3 electric buses on top of that
Yep.
that are gonna be replaced as well. So I just wanted to update you on that in case there was any questions as we get ready to go through that. Now, you don't need to make any final decision because I don't have the pieces that you're actually going to bond tonight, but that's what we have planned for in your budget. And when we do that, that'll get us up to at least currently around 2015. So we'll be still from a school year about 10 years behind, but you know, we got to see what enrollment does, see what the routes do,
Right.
and then also try to coordinate with the new school. Maybe we piggyback buses on top of that if there's a replacement. We'll see where these electric buses come in
Right.
from the standpoint of how they operate and work for us.
Yep.
You're not likely going down to Boston with them, but local routes, we should be okay. All right, but I just wanted you to have that list.
So what is the cost of an electric bus versus a regular bus?
So the 77 passenger bus is about 250,000, and then there's 75,000 in there for the charging infrastructure. That's how we came up with the 900-some thousand or $1,035,000, I think, is what they awarded us. And you can see a 77 passenger bus is about 127,000. It's a diesel bus,
Okay.
so it's about half the cost. But it's the grants that are probably helping inflate that right now. I was told by the carrier that these will likely be Thompson buses. That's who we buy from. But it was mentioned to be by our provider that one of the school districts down south had purchased 38 of them and then canceled the order. So that means they have frames sitting ready for those. So there might be a faster process in which they get here.
Yep.
But we also have to have the infrastructure in place. So there's no point in getting them until the infrastructure. We have till next May to get this done. So there'll be a lot of coordination with us and the city, specifically up at General Services for the conf, and they're always very responsive and great to work with. So we'll determine whether we do that ourselves, meaning us and the city, or do we need to bring a third-party vendor in to help manage that. I've had a conversation with our supplier who looks at it in 2 ways. They have this third-party company has a hands-off, where we have a hands-off, we turn it over to them, and they manage the whole fleet. They piggyback off of our award and can put that under warranty and term for between 10 and 12 years. Or we can just contract to them to say, here, put in the infrastructure, and then we take care of the bus. So then it might affect some warranty things. So we're working through what those financial details are gonna look like. Okay? And we'll get back to you on that. But at least this time we've got it awarded after, what, 3 times, 4
Yeah.
times?
Yeah.
3 times the
Exciting.
charm, yeah. So it'll be neat. And at times, I think I mentioned you 125 miles that they'll get out of a charge. They're now up to 140. So I think the technology is gonna continue to get better and better. So we'll see how it goes. Okay?
Can I ask a quick question about the wheelchair access? Do the newer buses that we're buying, just the regular buses, I'm seeing the ones that we have 0 wheelchair access for the larger buses. Does that come as part of like a new bus model, or is that like a?
It's an option.
It's
And
an
then
option.
they pick that based on the routes that they have and what they're projected to have for
Okay.
students.
Okay,
That's usually how they do it.
all right, thank you.
Okay? So if there's no questions on agenda item number 4, we're done 1, 2, and 4. We can move to number 3, which I have put in number 3 as a non-public under section C and D.
All right. Any other business before we go into non-public session? Okay. Not seeing that, I will make a motion, and then after that, we will not be coming back for anything other than to adjourn. So Concord TV can end their transmission. So with that, I'll make a motion that we go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A:3, Section 2, J, item C and D. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion? All those in, is this a roll call vote for this to go into that? So, Mr. Cotton,
Yes.
Ms. Meeker?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we are in non-public session from here on out. Thank you, everyone, for attending and for listening on the stream or on TV. All right.